Avengers Endgame was an epic conclusion to the events Marvel Studios had set in motion over a decade ago. But as we say goodbye to the Avengers as we know them, we have to wonder what comes next. Will Phase 4 of Marvel movies be a grim place without some of our favorite heroes? In this video, we're going to think of the universe as half full and talk about what we're already looking forward to the most in Phase 4. Here at CBR, we love comic books, but we can also admit that they're not perfect. For a long time, they struggled to create realistic Asian characters that weren't basically walking stereotypes. As a result, some of the older characters have had, let's say, problematic elements to their personalities and storylines over the years. But Marvel Studios has been dedicated to bringing diversity to the big screen and updating classic characters while maintaining what we loved about them so much in the first place. For example, Wong from Doctor Strange went from being extremely subservient to Doctor Strange in the comics to lecturing him about the time-space continuum on the big screen. So to say we're excited about finally getting a Shang-Chi movie in the MCU is an understatement. In the comic books, he's the son of Fu Manchu, which would give you an idea of the sorts of problems Marvel Studios is facing. But they're determined to get this movie right and celebrate elements of Asian culture in the process. They've hired writer Dan Callahan, who's known for his work on the Expendables franchise, and director Destin Daniel Cretton, who has worked with Marvel movie stars like Brie Larson and Michael B. Jordan previously. With the cast of Marvel movie characters at an all-time low after Avengers Endgame, we're looking forward to seeing some exciting new additions. Of course, we love our human superheroes, but there's also something special about incorporating new beings and places into the cinematic world so similar to our own, much less an exciting one. Marvel Studios has been talking about bringing the Eternals to the big screen for quite some time, and it seems like it's finally going to happen. Director Chloe Zhao is heading up the project, and supposedly, major movie star Angelina Jolie and Game of Thrones star Richard Madden will be appearing in the film. There's also a particularly tantalizing rumor that Keanu Reeves is in talk to appear in the movie. He was once in talks to play Yon-Rogg in Captain Marvel, but wasn't able to because of a scheduling conflict. This could be our chance to get Keanu Reeves in the MCU. Yes, please, thank you, make that happen. In the comic books, the Eternals were created long time ago by the Celestials to act as ultra-powerful defenders of Earth. They're kind of like humans, but they live much longer and have way better abilities. It'd definitely be interesting to see them integrated into the MCU and to find out where they've been all this time. There was a time when the MCU wasn't exactly known for its inclusive cast of characters. Even actress Scarlett Johansson admits that, at first, her character Natasha Romanoff felt more like a glorified secretary than the awesome secret agent she was supposed to be. It may have taken Marvel Studios about a decade to even let a female hero share a movie title with a male hero, but hey, better late than never, right? With Black Panther and Captain Marvel being such huge hits, and a Shang-Chi movie in the works, it's clear Marvel Studios is doing their best to bring more diversity to the MCU, and we couldn't be happier about it. Director Joe Russo himself played the first openly LGBTQ character in the MCU during Endgame, and he won't be the last. According to EFP of production, Victoria Alonso, Disney is actively working on creating a more inclusive universe. There are even some rumors that there could be some LGBTQ characters in the Eternals movie. Some speculate it'll involve the character Hercules, who's bisexual in the comic books. There's also talk that the studio is going to cast an openly gay character for a lead role, possibly for the part of the Eternal Icarus. As we mentioned earlier, Black Widow had some difficulties in the early days of the MCU. Many fans believe she started out as way too one-dimensional, and she seemed to have acted as a motivation for the male characters around her more than anything else. It seemed like Marvel Studios wasn't really taking her seriously either, as even Mark Ruffalo joined the chorus of people complaining that there was a serious lack of Black Widow merchandise. But thankfully that seems to be changing since we're finally getting the Black Widow movie we've been clamoring for since the beginning. Yes, after what happened in Endgame, it's probably going to be a prequel, but that doesn't mean it won't be awesome. Of course, it's going to star Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, and actress Florence Pugh will also be playing a spy, but one with a very different moral compass than Natasha's. That's the kind of statement that's just vague enough to pique our interest without revealing much of anything. It's classic Marvel Studios. We're just glad Black Widow is finally getting some standalone recognition after all her years in the MCU. Obviously, we're thrilled about the idea of getting a Black Widow movie after all these years. We were honestly beginning to think that it'd never happen. But a sequel to the ultra-popular and lucrative Black Panther movie? That seemed like much more of a sure thing. So we were definitely delighted but not surprised to learn that Black Panther 2 got the green light from Marvel Studios. Ryan Coogler wrote and directed the first movie, and he's been hired on to do the same for the sequel. Again, not a surprise, but something we're very glad to have confirmed. Although Coogler did a fantastic job with the first movie, he admits this is his first attempt at creating a sequel. It'll definitely be interesting to see what he comes up with, and considering how successful the first movie was, it's safe to say he's probably feeling some serious pressure. Although Marvel Studios has been delaying any announcements regarding Phase 4, some information has leaked from a source who has proven to be correct in the past. They claim Michael B. Jordan will be reprising his role as Eric Killmonger in Black Panther 2, but no, he won't magically be coming back to life. Instead, he'll be able to communicate with T'Challa through the ancestral plane. Whether or not that's true, we're still looking forward to seeing our favorite Wakandan members of the MCU back on the big screen. Black Panther was a movie that had some pretty far-reaching implications for the MCU as a whole. It brought the nation of Wakanda into public view, and started an outreach program that could definitely stir up some drama in the future. But Doctor Strange was a more self-contained movie, and other than the involvement of the Time Stone, it wasn't super relevant to other Marvel movies. Still, the movie did leave things pretty open-ended, and after having lost the Time Stone in Avengers Infinity War, it seems like Doctor Strange's position as Sorcerer Supreme is all the more precarious. So we're definitely looking forward to the Doctor Strange sequel that's been announced. In the first movie, Karl Mordo went from being the Ancient One's #1 fan to being totally disillusioned with her, and the mystic arts in general. He made it his mission to bring down magic users, and we saw him get started at the end of the movie. It'll be interesting to see what he's been up to since the last time we saw him on the big screen, and how the decimation impacted his new life's path. In addition to the villain we know, it's also possible we'll get to see the comic book character Nightmare in the Doctor Strange sequel. After all, he was originally going to be included in the first movie, but it was decided that packing his origin story with Doctor Strange's would just be too much for one film. We're sure we don't need to explain what made Guardians of the Galaxy so great. Not only did it have an amazing soundtrack, but we got to see a group of non-human heroes having adventures in outer space. What's not to like about that? The second movie was also a hit, and we couldn't wait for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 until Disney suddenly terminated the contract of James Gunn. Some unsavory tweets from years ago came back to haunt him, and although Gunn immediately owned up and apologized, Disney let him go anyway. This greatly upset the cast and crew, who were unanimously on Gunn's side. Not only that, but no other directors wanted to work on the project because it was so heavily associated with Gunn. Thor Ragnarok director Taika Waititi stated that these movies were Gunn's and neither he nor any other director wanted to take them on. Eventually, Disney realized the error of their ways, or maybe they were sick of the movie being stuck in development hell. Whatever the case was, they rehired Gunn, and now Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is finally going to happen with the director who kicked off the franchise at the helm and the full cooperation of the cast and crew. There are many reasons we're ecstatic that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is finally moving forward, not the least of which was that the previous movie's mid-credit scene hinted at Adam Warlock, a character comic fans have been looking forward to seeing in the MCU for what seems like forever. Apparently, there was talk of including another major comic book character in the third movie, and that's Richard Rider, better known as Nova. Richard started out as your average high school student before he made the acquaintance of Roman Day, the last surviving member of the Nova Corps. Roman transferred his power and equipment to Richard, who called himself Nova in his memory. We thought there was a decent chance he might show up at some point during the Infinity Saga, especially since Thanos wiped out the Nova Corps and all, but it turns out that Nova is supposedly getting his very own movie instead of making his appearance as a part of another franchise. We think this is a good call and sets Nova up to be an even bigger hero than he might have been otherwise. Thor has been a popular superhero since he first showed up in the MCU, but let's be honest, his movies haven't always been the best. Many people consider Thor: The Dark World to be the weakest offerings from Marvel Studios, and actor Chris Hemsworth agrees. He stated that for quite some time, he felt stagnant in his role as Thor and wasn't happy about the trajectory of the character, so he sat down with Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige, who thankfully listened to his concerns. For Thor Ragnarok, Hemsworth had much more input, and director Taika Waititi took the franchise and the main character in a different direction that went over well with both Hemsworth and the fans. Despite his character's difficulties in Avengers Endgame, Thor's popularity is at an all-time high. Prior to the release of Endgame, Hemsworth has stated that his contract with Marvel Studios would be up once the movie was over, and he was considering retiring to spend more time with his family. But more recently, he's expressed an interest in continuing to portray the God of Thunder, and there are rumors we could see a fourth Thor movie. As we mentioned earlier, the Avengers roster is pretty darn low following Endgame, but there are some supposed leaks which claim there might be some other superhero teams being introduced to the MCU sooner than we think. Marvel Studios has been teasing a Young Avengers movie for quite some time, and have said that it's something they're considering. If you've been paying close attention, it certainly seems they've been dropping some hints that the Young Avengers are on their way. In AntMan and the Wasp, Cassie Lang learned about the idea of becoming a superhero and fighting crime alongside her father. Thanks to the time jump in Endgame, It seems like Cassie might be old enough to start seriously considering her career as a superhero. Then we have Clint Barton, who's clearly been training his daughter to be the next Hawkeye. In the comic books, a woman named Kate Bishop takes on the mantle of Hawkeye after Clint loses his life. Don't worry, he gets better. It's comic books. But it seems like things are going to be done a bit differently in the MCU. It seems like Marvel Studios has laid the groundwork for the Young Avengers, and we could see a teenage superhero team at some point in Phase 4. Cassie Lang may be on her way to becoming a hero, but let's not forget about her father, Scott Lang. Although Scott helped Captain America's team in Civil War, we didn't see a ton of his interactions with other Marvel characters in the movie. In general, Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp were pretty self-contained films, but the fans liked them and they did well at the box office. Not $1 billion plus well or anything, but they were definitely profitable. Many wondered if they would ever make a third one, especially since prior to the mid-credits scene, everything seemed to be wrapped up pretty nicely. But the leaks coming in about Phase 4 claim there'll be a third entry in the Ant-Man franchise. The Quantum Realm played an important role in Endgame, and we finally got to see Scott interacting with many of his fellow heroes. The movie had made Scott a more important character, and that could bode well for his future in Phase 4. Plus, let's not forget that Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, and Hope Van Dyne are now back as well. These characters had much bigger roles in the comic books, and it'd be cool to see more of them in Phase 4. Nowadays, the Avengers have some openings, to put things mildly. But according to the leaks involving Phase 4, there may be some new superhero teams forming once Phase 3 is complete. In addition to the Young Avengers, we may also get to see the New Avengers. Now, in the comic books, the New Avengers consider themselves to be the true Avengers. This group chose not to comply with superhuman regulation and features an ever-changing roster of heroes. It starts out with Luke Cage, Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Spider-Woman. Later on, heroes like X-Man, Wolverine, Sentry, Doctor Strange, Miss Marvel, and more join up at various points. They're brought together when duty calls, just like the heroes of the MCU. Right now, there were many characters in the current cast who were members of this group at one time. These include Peter Parker, Carol Danvers, Doctor Strange, Bucky Barnes, and Clint Barton. Shang-Chi also joined at one point, and it's possible his standalone movie could kick off the New Avengers. We're always interested in seeing new combinations of our favorite characters interacting with one another. After all, who could have guessed Rocket and Thor would make one of the best teams in the galaxy? It's true that we love seeing our favorite heroes get together and find new and exciting ways to save the day, but we'd be lying if we didn't say we love the idea of villains doing the same thing. We've seen villains work together in the MCU before. Well, mostly it was just Thanos bossing other villains around, but in addition to getting the Young Avengers and the New Avengers, there are rumors we could also see the Dark Avengers. Not only is this a group of powerful supervillains, but they're masquerading as well-known villains in order to blend in with the authentic heroes. You have crime fighters like Sentry and Ares, as well as some undercover baddies. There's Mac Gargan's Venom going undercover as Spider-Man, Bullseye as Hawkeye, Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot, and Daken as Wolverine. As you can imagine, things get pretty crazy, especially when Norman Osborn declares war on Asgard. This is the kind of overtop scenario we love seeing in the comic books, and it'd be awesome to have it translated to the big screen. If you thought time travel was crazy, just keep in mind that we don't even have any superhero clones in the MCU yet. At least, not that we know of. When we talk about the MCU typically, we're referring to what happens in the movies. There are other Marvel shows out there, but some people debate whether or not they take place in the same universe as the movies. We respect your right to have your own headcanon, but we have to say that we're excited we're going to have new ways to watch some of our favorite Marvel movie characters. Here at CBR, we definitely know the pain of having to wait for centuries to see a new Marvel movie. Okay, maybe not centuries, but sometimes it feels like it. Anyway, now there's another streaming platform for us to throw money at, and that's Disney Plus streaming service. You might be more than satisfied with your Netflix subscription, but how are you going to watch the show featuring the Winter Soldier and Falcon? There's also WandaVision, the show about Wanda Maximoff and Vision, and of course, the adventures of Loki. There's also going to be a series featuring Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton as he trains the new Hawkeye, and we've heard rumors of a show involving Lady Sif. Okay, we like to complain about Marvel Studios keeping us in the dark as much as the next YouTube channel, but secretly we kinda love it. They really mastered the art of keeping us guessing in order to build anticipation. Remember how long they took to announce the title of Avengers Endgame, and all the other times they teased us about it? They've even leaked information using notorious spoiler factories Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland. At first, it was to announce that Endgame would mark the end of Phase 3 and Spider-Man Far From Home would kick off Phase 4. Then it changed, and Far From Home was said to be the final movie in Phase 3. As for what Phase 4 would consist of, it's been mostly a mystery. Sure, as you may have noticed, there's been plenty of rumors floating around, but nothing definite and no release dates. Even all of what we currently know comes from a leak, and what's to say Marvel Studios themselves isn't behind it? Marvel's method of delaying news, putting out misleading trailers, and orchestrating leaks is actually pretty remarkable. They've already got their method down pat, and we can't wait to be driven crazy about what's to come in Phase 4. What are you most looking forward to in the upcoming Phase 4 of Marvel movies? Share your thoughts and predictions with us in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for the latest and greatest videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.